Hi, it's me, your dad on vacation. So in the current age of internet media discourse, there's one word, phrase, label, criticism that many seem eager to hurl at every movie, series, and video game to be announced. And that word is woke.
Woke.
Now, what does woke mean? Well, according to Oxford English Dictionary, it means to be alert and concerned about social injustice and discrimination. Well, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, and feels like it could be used to describe a lot of widely beloved art from generations past. But again, in modern internet media discourse, the definition seems to have gotten a little broader, as media can be described as woke simply for featuring women or people of color in starring roles, featuring queer people in minor roles, and perhaps most egregious of all, having Princess Peach wear pants.
You don't have her whip out, pants and halberd in Smash Bros.
Yeah.
Instead, she's fighting in a fun, girly way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Peach.
Peach!
Yeah.
Princess Peach!
Yeah.
Giving her pants.
And it just feels like there's this narrative that a lot of people are buying into that in the last 10 years or so, Hollywood has started to prioritize above all else in mainstream blockbuster films, elevating marginalized groups like the women, the queers, and the non-whites, while turning all straight white men characters into embarrassing, pathetic little cretins. And this messaging sinisterly lurking within the subtext of all mainstream media is part of some ultimate plan to turn kids trans or something. I don't really know. And also that this is the sole detriment to the objective decline in quality to all blockbuster films. A decline in quality that definitely doesn't have anything to do with a global pandemic that causes people to stop caring about going to the theater, causing studios to focus more on streaming, a landscape where instead of only having other movies to compete with, they have to compete with every other form of mental stimulation available, and abandoning the goal of making good art for the goal of getting the most attention. Plus, the higher-ups at these billion-dollar corporations that own these studios underpaying and overworking all the artists working for them, and that's only while they still feel that AI isn't capable of doing what the artists can. And this all causes the artists to rightfully go on strike, which causes months-long production delays, on top of the whole year the industry had to be on hold for the pandemic. Also, maybe just growing up and having seen more movies makes you harder to impress. Have you ever considered that? Have you ever considered that that might be why The Last Jedi seems so much worse than Attack of the Clones to you? And just the ability to be exposed to the opinions of thousands of internet strangers influencing you the moment you're done consuming any new piece of media. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, woke. Movies all suck now because they're all woke. Now to me, this whole narrative of wokeness killing Hollywood very much seems like an equality will feel like oppression to the privileged type of thing. A lot of dudes online noticed that movies aren't hitting the same as when they were younger. And instead of any of the previous explanations that I mentioned for this phenomenon, they've decided that the problem is big budget blockbuster movies have stopped catering exclusively to them. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an undeniable correlation between blockbuster movies striving to represent more people and them getting objectively worse. So I thought it'd be fun to watch the 10 or so blockbuster movies that have been slapped with the woke label most. And with each, I'll be asking myself 3 questions. Is it woke? Is it bad? And if it is bad, is it a direct result of being woke? Now, in this video, I'm going to be defending a lot of these movies from what the general consensus of them is among the countless internet boys who cried woke, as I like to call them. But here's the thing, all these movies are produced by either Disney, Warner Brothers, or Sony, all billion-dollar media corporations. And in defending these movies, I do not want to be mistaken for defending the ethical goals of these corporations. I know that all the suits at the top of these corporations care about is increasing shareholder value, and all these perceived strides in representation ultimately stem from a desire to get more money from people belonging to the new groups being represented. represented. But now, after there's been so much backlash towards especially the attempts at queer representation, they're walking it back. Like, apparently Disney removed a trans character from the animated show Win or Lose. And I think they were also worried about Riley in Inside Out 2 being perceived as queer. But you know, even movies produced by billion-dollar corporations have hundreds of passionate artists working on them, most of whom I like to believe are trying to make something of quality in spite of all the restrictions. And honestly, after watching so many pieces of Christian nationalist propaganda disguised as movies for this channel, the bar for what I consider a good movie has just become really easy to clear. Like, I'm just less likely to complain about having to watch the live-action Aladdin after suffering through 5 God's Not Deads. God's Not Dead 3 actually wasn't that bad, but okay, so the first movie that I can remember garnering a noticeable amount of internet criticism for being woke was...
And now they're making Ghostbusters with only women. What's going on?
I mean, 4 female Ghostbusters? The feminists are taking over. I'm an adult virgin.
So it was announced that the original Ghostbusters was being reimagined as a team of 4 women, and a lot of men were pathetically upset about this, some going as far as to harass the actresses online with slurs. And instead of doing the classy thing, which would have been to ignore the controversy and try to prove the naysayers wrong simply by making a good movie, this movie opted to kind of provoke its critics, both in its marketing and in the movie itself.
It's not just us. We have over 100 comments already, and they're not all crazy.
Read that. Ain't no bitches gonna hunt no ghosts.
Oh, no. Okay.
And like, it's a common criticism from the boys who cry woke that in every blockbuster movie nowadays, the men are all either pathetic, stupid, sexist, or weak. We've lost great men characters. And while I disagree and don't think this rings true for most modern blockbusters, it's actually kind of accurate with the 2016 Ghostbusters. Every male character is either evil or stupid. And they even defeat the final monster by shooting him in the crotch. And like, this doesn't deeply offend me or make me feel like less of a man or whatever. I don't care. Nor do I think there isn't room to criticize men and masculinity in the art form of cinema, obviously. But it doesn't feel like this movie was trying to do that in any meaningful, subversive way. I think it just kind of wanted to own the guys who were mad about this movie from the jump. Which I get, but I don't know, it kind of just gave the impression that this whole movie was made out of spite. And I just think for a franchise like Ghostbusters that's beloved by many, it would have been a good idea to have like 1 or 2 dudes on the team. Also, beyond being women, there just isn't a ton of variation in the personalities of these 4 characters, in my opinion. They're all just kind of quippy and awkward, and it doesn't feel like any of their dialogue was tailored to their character specifically, if that makes sense.
Booyah. Emphasis on the boo.
How's the movie outside of that, though? It's fine. Here's the thing. The original Ghostbusters movie had a really tight, clever script and wasn't necessarily trying to be some big 4-quadrant blockbuster, which allowed it to have a really unique, almost like blue-collar vibe and sense of humor. This movie, on the other hand, was trying to be a huge blockbuster, so I feel it had to play it safer, and as a result, the plot is pretty much just a rehash of the originals. And the humor honestly feels like kind of mid-improv.
Yeah, he probably dances real sexy. You know what I'm saying? Like just a whine.
I don't think his hips move at all. I think he's mechanical from like the ribcage down. I know how that guy dances.
How's he dance?
Like,
no. I'm telling you, I bet you he get loose and I bet you pop locks. I bet you.
he did. No! None of that's happening. It's rigid.
Girl.
It's got a lot of teeth.
Please.
And he thinks he's doing you a favor. And you're like, get it off me.
He ripped that V-neck off and he gets it busy,
And he rips that V-neck off, he's got another V-neck underneath it.
And that's really a shame because I've seen all 4 of these women be hilarious on SNL. So, Ghostbusters 2016, was it woke? I mean, by the new bastardized definition, yes, as it does star 4 women, one of whom is black, and the lack of likable male characters. Is it bad? I mean, it is aggressively mid, yeah. But is it bad as a result of being woke? I'm gonna say no, even though it could have dialed back the spite towards the bitter fanboys. Without that, the movie still wouldn't have been good because it's just painfully generic and safe. But I do definitely think it would have been possible to make a great Ghostbusters movie with an all-female team. This just wasn't it. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Melissa McCarthy's character reading the rest of the team marks was a bit much. You know, I actually reviewed this movie on this channel once before when I was 15.
Oh, that's gonna leave a mark.
Oh, that'll leave a mark. Ah, comedic gold right there. Comedic gold. You know, this film's gonna leave a mark. A mark on my sanity.
Man, I've been doing this for too fucking long. Next. So if Ghostbusters was the movie I remember bothering some people for being too woke, the first movie's supposed wokeness I remember bothering a lot of people was undoubtedly Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. Holy shit, did this movie bother a lot of people.
Fuck this movie. This movie and everyone in it.
This movie took everything that you like about Star Wars, that you love about Star Wars, that you thought you knew about Star Wars, and it on it. And on it again, and then it sets it on fire, and then it on it again.
I don't even have one good fucking thing to say about this movie. It is just rancid diarrhea.
What a fucking bomb. What a disappointment. Couldn't believe my fucking eyes.
This movie was complete fucking garbage.
This movie is trash, bruh. This is a whack, trash, garbage movie, and I can't believe what Disney did to me.
Now, before I tell you what I think of this movie, I think I should tell you where I stand on the Star Wars franchise in general. In short, I always have and always will love it. But weirdly, as I know is the case with most Star Wars fans, I don't think I could say that I think a majority of Star Wars media is even good. I'm more just fascinated by it as a cultural phenomenon. Like what started as one up-and-coming filmmaker's modestly budgeted passion product where age-old storytelling tropes play out in a unique outer space fantasy western setting, for some reason ended up resonating with the masses in such a way that it became one of the biggest media franchises ever. That is interesting. But as for Star Wars media itself, I feel for me most of it fits pretty firmly into one of three tiers in regards to quality. The smallest tier being the media I believe are actually great pieces of art, then a tier of media that is imperfect but still entertaining, and a tier of media that's bad. And then there's a few things that I still haven't seen, sorry. The Last Jedi, though, which feels to me like the most hated Star Wars movie, I personally would place in that second tier of imperfect but still very entertaining. I remember walking out of that theater at 17 years old having really enjoyed myself, only to discover that a whole lot of people felt differently, so why was that? Well, to be fair, a lot of common criticisms of this movie don't have to do with its perceived wokeness. For example, many took issue with the direction it chose to take with Luke Skywalker's character, having him become hardened, bitter, and closed off from the Force after his own momentary temptation to kill his nephew Ben, whom he had a premonition would go on to cause great harm, ended up being what ultimately caused Ben's turn to the dark side and all that great harm happening. And honestly, I still don't understand why this bothered people so much. One of the central themes of Star Wars is resisting temptation of the dark side, so I don't think it's that out of character for Luke to have struggled with that again, especially when the intention of the dark act he was contemplating was to prevent the harm of more than just Ben. And he ultimately didn't go through with it.
It passed like a fleeting shadow, and I was left with shame. And with consequence.
Like, in the favorite Star Wars movie of most people my age, Anakin goes through with killing a whole generation of innocent children, and he's still a beloved character. Why is that fine, but this is unforgivable? And people also don't like that this mistake caused him to exile himself when the Resistance could have used him in the conflict with the First Order. And it's like, yeah, he shouldn't have done that, which he realizes himself, causing him to return and save the day in the end. It's called a character arc. Also, while I most often hear the decision to have Luke exile himself as a criticism of this movie, him having done that was established in the previous movie, The Force Awakens.
He was training a new generation of Jedi. One boy, an apprentice, turned against him and destroyed it all. Luke felt responsible. He just walked away from everything.
In writing this movie, Rian Johnson was just elaborating on a plot point that had already been established for him. Like, not to sound too dismissive of the people who are critical of Luke in this movie, but I can't help but feel a lot of it just stems from them not liking seeing their childhood hero and favorite action figure being sad and unhelpful. And like, yeah, it's supposed to be kind of a bummer to see him like this. That's what makes it all the more satisfying when he comes around in the end. Like, am I crazy? Okay, but what about the criticisms of this movie being too woke? Well, a lot of them are in regard to the character of Rey. A lot of people claim that the female Jedi hero of this trilogy, in contrast to Anakin and Luke, the male heroes of the previous two trilogies, is too perfect, powerful, and things come to her too easily. Without any training, she's just immediately a great pilot, fighter, and Force user. Also, where a character like Luke was powerful in the Force due to his relation to Anakin, it's revealed in this movie that Rey's parents were nobody of note, meaning she's just powerful out of nowhere.
They were nobody.
They were filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money. The dead in a pauper's grave in the Jakku desert. You come from nothing. You're nothing.
And many believe this is a prime example of Hollywood's agenda to make female characters so powerful and perfect to the point of being boring. And it's like, I guess when this was brought up to me after seeing the movie and I thought about it, there's something to it, but I just don't think it's so evident of a problem that it really detracts from my viewing experience of the movie. Plus, like, Luke and Anakin were pretty inexplicably skilled too. Anakin was like a child prodigy pod racer, Luke was able to blow up the Death Star and escape the Wampa with minimal training, and I seriously don't think the decision to have Rey's parents be nobody of note was meant to be a statement on her being uniquely powerful and special compared to the existing male Star Wars protagonists. It was just the only thing that wasn't incredibly predictable. The whole 2 years between episodes 7 and 8, everyone was speculating that her dad would be Luke, Han Solo, Obi-Wan. But her just being a randomly powerful Force user out of nowhere was the most unexpected, interesting thing they could have done. This reveal bothered so many people, however, that in the next movie they walked it back, making it so Rey is actually the granddaughter of Palpatine, and now has to reckon with the revelation that she's actually related to the dark side threat she's been opposing. You know, exactly like Luke did 4 years prior. Boring. People also claimed wokeness was a detriment to this movie because they didn't like the new characters Rose and Admiral Holdo, who are an Asian woman and purple-haired female leader respectively. But I disagree. I don't think they're bad characters, especially Rose. I think the actual problem was just that their respective subplots, while not bad, weren't nearly as engaging or memorable as the movie's central conflict involving Luke, Rey, and Kylo Ren. All those scenes were really intriguing, like I'm always super locked into that when I watch this movie, so when it cuts back to the other story threads, they just feel pretty mid in comparison. But hey, a Star Wars movie with a subplot that feels mediocre in comparison to its central plot already existed. Return of the Jedi literally cuts between Luke trying to bring his father to the light and the Ewoks mistaking C-3PO for a god. Star Wars media varying greatly in quality has been a thing arguably going all the way back to the holiday special. Yet this movie is probably the most hated Star Wars movie, and honestly, it might be one of the most hated movies of all time. So many people took the fact that this movie wasn't what they personally wanted as like a serious personal offense. And I just think that's a result of so many people caring about Star Wars with the veracity of like a religious zealot. So an installment being released that doesn't align with their view of what Star Wars is supposed to be is treated like literal blasphemy. And while I respect the passion, I guess, I just personally can't bring myself to get that angry about a children's movie. So Star Wars The Last Jedi, is it woke? I mean, yeah, in the way that Star Wars has always been woke, as it's about a group of scrappy freedom fighters taking on an impossibly powerful authoritarian regime. And is it bad? I don't think so. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Rey reading Lenin to the Porgs was a bit much. Okay, next.
This guy watched Captain Marvel 2 times.
So 2019's Captain Marvel is a movie that received a lot of hate, very little of which I think had to do with the movie itself. I think it was more a result of one, the fact that many saw Marvel as a guy's thing, so the first Marvel movie with a woman in the title role was gonna be met with some baseline animosity. And two, leading up to this movie's release, its star Brie Larson used her new platform to advocate for there to be more diverse voices in the world of film criticism.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
And despite her saying multiple times in her speech,
Am I saying that I hate white dudes? No, I'm not. I don't hate white dudes.
the white dudes sure didn't take it that way. This led to a huge hate campaign against the movie, a narrative that it was going to ruin Marvel. A bunch of trolls even review bombed the movie on Rotten Tomatoes without seeing it, causing Rotten Tomato to delete those reviews, pissing those people off even more. And even in the years following the movie's release, the reputation of Brie Larson and the character of Captain Marvel to a lot of people is just that she's a shrill and annoying man-hater. I remember there being a ton of videos during the Avengers Endgame press tour of people speculating that the rest of the cast secretly hated her.
People have asked if the cast doesn't get along with Brie, and even as an audience member, it's tough to sit through some of these interviews without cringing. So today, I want to talk about what you can learn from these situations, and how to prevent yourself from doing specific behavior patterns that can make people dislike you without you intending or even realizing it.
And like one YouTube film critic who I don't want to put on blast, saying in his Avengers Endgame review how much he hated her haircut in it.
We see Captain Marvel with a haircut. I hate the haircut. I hate the short haircut entirely. No bueno from my perspective. But so especially when they cut to it, you're like, whoa. I'm not a fan of that right there.
Like, okay, dude. But how was the movie itself? 2019's Captain Marvel. I don't know, man. Here's the thing. Superheroes were like my main thing growing up. They were the first stories I fell in love with and obsessed over. So many of my favorite childhood memories are associated with the release of MCU movies.
And the reason why I am staying up late on a school night is because I'm waiting to go to the midnight premiere of The Avengers. Yep, I'm really excited.
So even as I get older and my taste matures, I still harbor some fondness for these movies and their tropes. Are there more of them than there need to be? Probably, but I still think there's a place for movies like these to maybe get a little inebriated and go have a good time. And that includes this movie. Again, I'm just not gonna complain about having to watch a Marvel movie when for any other video I'd be having to watch Christian nationalist propaganda. Plus, there's some good stuff in it. I like the 90s setting, complete with a soundtrack of cool 90s songs, especially the one that plays during the credits. Dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun. Oh, make me over. Dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun. I'm all I wanna be. I like Carol's friendship with Nick Fury. I remember at the time being a little annoyed that the origin of him losing his eye just turned out to be a gag where the alien cat scratches it. But in hindsight, it's pretty funny. All these years he was implying he lost it in battle.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
When really it was just that. I like the reveal that the Skrulls, who have been presented to us as villains for the first half of the movie, turn out to just be victims of the Kree militia who up to that point Carol had been working for. Like we as the audience were propagandized to fear them just as the characters were. That's pretty cool. But okay, what are some of the woke allegations made towards this movie? I've heard people say that the Captain Marvel Carol Danvers character is shrill and annoying, but I wouldn't personally say that. Maybe a little dull compared to other Marvel protagonists, but she opens up over the course of the movie. It's criticized for having a generic surface-level feminism message where since childhood, men have been telling her what she can't do and that she should keep her emotions in check.
There's nothing more dangerous to a warrior than emotion.
But it turns out she can actually do a lot, and that her emotions are what make her strong. And like, is that a little generic and surface level of a message? Yeah, but so are the themes of most Marvel movies. Similar to the complaints about Rey, people thought they were trying to send some sort of message by making this new female character suddenly be one of the more powerful Marvel heroes. And maybe they were. I just don't really care. It's honestly funny for a movie that seemed to deeply offend so many people. The best word I can think of to describe it is inoffensive. Also ironic to call it woke when a lot of it is pretty blatant American military propaganda. So Captain Marvel, is it woke? Not really. Is it bad? Also not really. It's fine. And especially when factoring in the post-credit scene, it just makes me so nostalgic for that year between Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. A year where I remember remember lying awake in bed each night just imagining how the next movie was going to unfold. In contrast to now, where I just lie awake thinking about all the baddies I've fumbled. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Carol reading Rosa Luxemburg to the scrolls was a bit much. Next? Hi, what can I get you tonight?
I'll tell you what, Yadi. I'm not trying to get 2 years tonight. So I think I'll just take a...
So this is a 2022 Toy Story spin-off focused on the character that supposedly inspired the Buzz Lightyear toy. It didn't get too many woke allegations until close to its release, where it came out that Buzz's friend is a woman who marries another woman, and they even kiss!
You know, lots of parents, they don't want to bring their kids to a cartoon movie where there's a lesbian kiss scene. And they also don't want entertainment that has a political or ideological message.
Maybe you should take it under advisement that the sexual values that the left teaches are not the ones you want your kids to learn from Lightyear the movie.
Buzz Lightyear, the new film, has the gay kiss, as is required in a children's film.
Well, in Disney, of course.
If you take something that's beloved, a franchise, an IP, and you decide to bastardize it in the sake of identity politics, if you decide to change something that people inherently love about a character, it's not gonna work out well for you.
This apparently made even Snoop Dogg uncomfortable while he was watching the movie with his grandson.
Well, my grandson in the middle of the movie like, Papa Snoop, how she have a baby with a woman? She a woman. Oh, I didn't come in for this. I just came to watch the damn movie. I'm scared to go to the movies now. Like, y'all throwing me in the middle of that I don't have an answer for.
Nice going, Disney. Thanks to your wokeness, Snoop was forced to explain in detail to his grandson sperm donors and in vitro fertilization. What an idiot. These characters aren't even a big part of the movie at all. They literally die at the end of like the first act. The extent of the representation here is one little smooch, which I'll show you now so you can see how innocuous of a moment caused all this outrage. Kidding, it's just that. That is pretty much the only reason this movie's considered woke. The bare minimum of queer representation. Seeing this would literally just be the equivalent of a child hearing that a classmate of theirs has 2 moms. In fact, I would criticize it for being too inconsequential. If you want to have a lesbian character, make her a part of the movie's main adventure. But to be clear, that was not the vast majority of people's problem with this. They just don't want kids knowing that gay people exist at all because they think that being gay is a choice, and that kids seeing this will cause them to make that choice. How's the rest of the movie though? A little boring. Here's the thing, the movie opens with text explaining that this is apparently the movie Andy from Toy Story saw that made him want the Buzz Lightyear toy, but not only does it not feel at all like a 90s sci-fi movie, despite supposedly being from 1995 in the Toy Story universe, I really don't buy this being a movie that a little boy would obsess over in that way. Like, I always imagined the Buzz Lightyear IP being the Toy Story world's version of Star Wars. But this movie kind of feels more like a family-friendly version of Interstellar or something, dealing with more heady sci-fi concepts like cryosleep, colonizing new planets, time dilation. Aside from Buzz's android cat Socks, who I was a fan of.
Hey, you're not authorized to be in this area.
Whoa, didn't know you could do that. Wait a minute, was that for me? In case I got out of line?
I bought you 5 minutes.
It doesn't have that memorable of a cast of characters, in my opinion, and I just think the old Buzz Lightyear of Star Command cartoon from the early 2000s makes a lot more sense as the in-universe property that inspired the toy. So Lightyear, is it woke? Not really, just has some gay supporting characters. And is it bad? Kind of. Not to say it's incompetent or cringe or anything, just forgettable. But is it bad because it's woke? Absolutely not. Like I said, the gay characters are dead for most of the movie. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Buzz reading Socks France Fanon was a bit much. Next. Strange, strange world is happening to me. This came out later in 2022 and similarly to Lightyear features a gay couple. But even more scandalously, they're teens, and one of them is a main character in the movie.
Parents don't want to bring their children to go watch, you know, a story revolving around a romance between two teenage boys.
Everybody, your kids need to be educated in the ways of this sort of subjective, individualist sexual culture. It's very important that your kids be indoctrinated into this.
Disney concocted their wokest film yet, climate change storyline with a gay teen protagonist.
New Disney film Strange World teaches kids being gay is normal in the best way. This is the message that Disney is now pushing full force.
And you know what actually really bothers me about all the outrage towards gay representation in Disney movies? Is how it's kind of a slap in the face to the many queer people who we can thank for the Disney classics. Like Hans Christian Andersen, who literally wrote the stories of The Little Mermaid and The Snow Queen, which was the basis for Frozen. Elton John co-writing the songs for The Lion King, and Howard Ashman co-writing the songs for The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. Not to mention animator Andreas Deha, Nathan Lane voicing Timon, plus how many clearly queer-coded characters there are in Disney movies. As is the case with all of Hollywood, queer people have always been a part of Disney's history. So to get mad at their mere existence being addressed in Disney movies themselves in what are, let's be real, extremely marginal ways is stupid. You're stupid. But anyway, Strange World. All the people who boycotted the movie for the gay kids never learned that it was also woke by the traditional definition. As spoilers, it's an allegory for climate change. They discover their world exists on the back of a giant creature, and that their use of an apparent miracle plant that powers everything in their world is slowly killing the creature. So as a society, they have to start using alternative means of energy. Pretty cool. But in contrast to Lightyear, I'd say this is a solid kids movie. It got a couple chuckles out of me, I like all the characters, I really like the visuals. I think it's cool how they take inspiration from the old movie Fantastic Voyage, but since it's not a human body they're traveling through, but that of a giant fantasy creature, they gave themselves a lot more creative freedom for what it could look like. So Strange World, is it woke? I guess, due to one queer main character and an environmental message. But is it bad? I really don't think so. I kind of liked it. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Ethan reading Splat Mao Zedong was a bit much. Next, a black mermaid? What's next? Black people? So listen, nobody is as tired as me of Disney needlessly remaking their animated classics for money. Like Moana, really? What in the 10-year-old Moana could possibly need updating? But 2023's remake of The Little Mermaid definitely got a disproportionate amount of hate to all the other live-action remakes, with maybe the exception of the Lion King one. And I guess you could say that maybe it's just because this is when people started to get really fed up with the trend, but I'm sorry, I saw enough racist memes when the casting of Halle Bailey as Ariel was announced to know that a lot of the hate was because she has more melanin than the fucking drawing from the original movie seemed to.
She's not white, she doesn't have red hair. Are you telling me there was no other actress in Hollywood that had the red hair and the skin tone?
Again, you can criticize Disney's greediness and unoriginality until the cows come home. But I think there's a limit to how much you can let the race of the Little Mermaid actress bother you, especially as a grown man, without it coming across as weird and racist. How's the actual movie though? Honestly, though I stand by my opinion that there's no need for it to exist, it's not terrible. Like, here's the thing, the decision to make a live-action remake of The Little Mermaid that has to have all the same characters, songs, and general plot beats as the original, that was made by the clueless, money-grubbing higher-ups at Disney. Most who actually worked on the movie, though, are probably just creative people trying their best to make something worthwhile within those rigid parameters. And I think they succeeded, not in making something great per se, but in making the best product they could given those restrictions. I think most of the casting is good, especially Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. I liked her much more in this than Ghostbusters, for example.
Oh, there it is. I got it.
And I swear, I'm not just saying this to be contrarian towards all the people that were against her casting. I actually think Halle Bailey gives a really charming performance as Ariel. And my god, has the voice of an angel. Or a mermaid. I didn't love all the new songs written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, but the one she sings I did. And I think her and Jonah Hauer-King as Eric legitimately have some chemistry. Now, aside from her casting, were there any unnecessary woke changes from the original animated movie? Will they make it so she's steering the ship when it stabs and kills Ursula instead of Eric, so she's definitively the hero of the story? Unnecessary, sure, but I don't really care. Also, they changed some lyrics in Kiss the Girl so that they don't imply you can kiss a girl without asking her.
Possible she wants you to use your words, boy, and ask her.
That, I'll agree, is ridiculous. Like, sure, you should ask, but it's a song. Plus, at that point in the story, Ariel can't even talk. I mean, I guess she could nod to consent. Also, one change that wasn't woke necessarily, but still strange, is that Ursula just straight up kills Triton as opposed to transforming him into that weird pathetic slug thing. Somehow that feels more devastating than him just dying to me. So The Little Mermaid, is it woke? Not really. It just stars a black person. And is it bad? I'd describe it as unnecessary, but competent. Like, it shouldn't have been any more of a point of discussion than any of the other live-action Disney remakes, but because of racism, it was. I will admit, though, the 30-minute scene of Ariel reading Eric Angela Davis was a bit much. Next. So I don't want to spend too long on Barbie because it's just a solid movie and all the woke allegations were so stupid. Basically, they were angry that it makes fun of men a little.
This film is one of the most blatant, man-hating, activism-charged, deranged, subversive, intersectional pieces of insane, hyper-indulgent, third-wave feminist propaganda I have ever seen.
It was 114 minutes of spiteful, bitter, mean-spirited, borderline unhinged hatred of men and everything even vaguely associated with them. Barbie is like the deformed, mutated rage child of Captain Marvel, Ghostbusters 2016 and She-Hulk. It is pure brain cancer in movie form, and I was genuinely shocked by the sheer, undisguised contempt this film has towards 50% of the human population.
Yeah, guys, women were the target demographic for the movie, and making fun of men is something that women do with each other. In their book clubs, in their group chats, and yeah, in their movies. Also, the message of the movie isn't like that we should hate all men and all men should die. It's co-written by a man. If you're actually watching the movie and listening to what it's saying, the message is that men shouldn't live solely for the validation of women. And the fact that so many do is an example of how everyone suffers under the patriarchy, including men. And I know how performative that sounds coming out of my mustache-adorned mouth, but I'm not necessarily saying that I agree, just that that is the message. I mean, I do pretty much agree, but that's beside the point. And like even Ryan Gosling's Ken, who probably says the most sexist stuff in the movie, is ultimately viewed with a sympathetic lens and as someone who deserves happiness. If you seriously can't handle a movie for women making fun of men for like being into The Godfather, you need to grow up. Some people also implied that the movie was like anti-motherhood, basically because of one joke at the beginning that implies motherhood is difficult sometimes.
The girls who played with them could only ever play at being mothers, which can be fun, at least for a while anyway. Ask your mother.
Because your mother actually hates you and doesn't like being a mom, you see. So if you ask your mom, she wants to play at not being a mom.
And if the visual metaphor of little girls happily destroying the embodiment of motherhood to focus their lives instead on a shallow and materialistic piece of consumerist trash is lost on you, then I don't know what to say, man.
And it's like the whole movie is about motherhood. Its director and star are both mothers. There's a plot of a mother and daughter reconciling. They bring up how Barbie was named after the creator's daughter. I feel like the standout quote from the movie was,
"We mothers stand still so our daughters can look back to see how far they've come."
But these people are worried that an entire generation of girls will decide not to be mothers because of one joke in the Barbie movie about motherhood being difficult. Also, there's a trans woman in the movie who they were obviously mad about.
One of the Barbies is a trans Barbie, and this is treated totally normally, as though this is a female Barbie, with a voice, again, deeper than my own.
And these are the same idiots that insist left-leaning people are all sensitive crybabies. So Barbie, is it woke? Yes, but only in the best ways, and that's why it's so good. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Barbie reading Ken Alexandra Kollontai was a bit much. Next.
We lost Monica.
Me explaining why I can't list my Monopoly Friends edition for too high a price on eBay. 2023's The Marvels was accused of being woke because it's the sequel to Captain Marvel and they were still mad at Brie Larson 4 years later. Also, this time it stars 2 additional women who aren't white! And look, I watched the movie and it was extremely mid. I'm not gonna deny that. The plot and action are extremely generic. I feel it lost some identity from being set in modern day as opposed to the 90s like the first one. It's awkward that the 2 additional leads were introduced in Disney Plus series that casual viewers may not have watched. But you know, it wasn't all terrible. There was some cute interactions between the 3 leads learning to work together. Samuel L. Jackson is always fun to watch regardless of what he's in.
Are you praying? Don't stop. We need all the help we can get. Amen.
And there was an entertaining sequence where they had to evacuate a space station by allowing everyone to be eaten by the cat aliens, the Flurkins, while the song Memory from the musical Cats played. I don't know, I thought that was funny. Overall, no, this was not a great movie, but it is undeniably for children. And listen, I think that children deserve better than just mid-movies, I really do. But mid-children's media has existed almost as long as cinema itself. But for whatever reason, the trailer for this mid-children's movie was uniquely deserving of being the most disliked movie trailer in YouTube history. Why so much vitriol for this but not Gabby's Dollhouse the movie or Freakier Friday? Again, my best guess is that it's technically part of a franchise that these men feel is for them and they take offense when one installment in it feels like it's not. But personally, I just think it's weird to have beef with a children's movie. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of Monica reading Carol Maya Angelou was a bit much. Next. Okay, this is the big one. Definitely the Hollywood movie that was the most hated, the most controversial for being woke. All before the general public had even seen a second of the film itself. So first it was announced that, like they had been doing with all their animated classics, Disney greenlit a remake for their first ever animated feature, 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And in addition to the usual backlash for their continued unoriginality, actor Peter Dinklage took issue with this, believing that any depiction of people with his condition as, like, magical was problematic.
You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the f are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough.
To ease the concerns brought up by Dinklage, Disney explained that in this new version, the dwarves would not be people with dwarfism, but instead fantasy creatures. And nobody really knew what to make of that. Then later it was announced that Snow White would be portrayed by actress Rachel Zegler, which really pissed off a lot of grown men, because Snow White is supposed to have skin as white as snow. And despite not really being able to tell just by looking at her, in my opinion, Rachel Zegler has Colombian ancestry. So they knew that she didn't have the pure blood of a white person that they were looking for.
Some people are complaining that she's kind of snow brown. She's a little bit darker skin. Snow White is supposed to be white as snow. That's why they call her Snow White. But apparently you can't cast a white person as a white person anymore.
We've already seen how they traded in Snow White for Snow Brown.
Of course, Snow White is brown.
Snow White is a story about a woman whose skin is as white as snow. That's not racist, it's just in the story. In the same way that Pinocchio is about a wooden doll. And if you make the doll out of aluminum, it's a kind of different story.
Oh, you'd be just as offended if they made Pinocchio out of metal? Well, they already did that in 2003's Pinocchio 3000.
Cheer.
A great film. Where are your several videos ranting about Pinocchio 3000, Ben? Then, while promoting the film at D23, Rachel Zegler was talking about how their version of the story was going to give the character of Snow White a little more agency. And in doing so, she threw a little shade to the original 1937 movie.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
And I have to say, The responses to this interview contained some of the most blatant misogyny I've heard in like the past decade.
If a woman is kind, that means that she is weak. We cannot have that anymore, ladies. You must be bossy at all times. You must be bratty, smug, and single and unhappy. Then you will be relevant.
So now Rachel Zegler goes on, keeps talking, which is always a mistake if you're an actress. There's a part where you should stop talking.
Yes, like Brie Larson before her, Rachel Zegler committed the cardinal sin of being perceived as annoying by men on the internet. She even made the perfect face for them to cut out and use in all their YouTube thumbnails. Then, and keep in mind this is still before even a trailer for the movie had been released, a set photo from the movie was leaked that seemed to show Zegler's stand-in with 8 racially diverse men and women, one who has dwarfism. Then, assuming these to be the movie's replacement for the 7 dwarves, everyone freaked out about it.
Let's look at Snow White's magical friends. You have a black one, a Latina Snow White, a couple of women, they all shatter. Were 7 dwarves not diverse enough for Disney?
I specifically remember former Daily Wire host Brett Cooper having a reaction to this image that was really insane.
First of all, there was only one dwarf. One actual dwarf, the token dwarf, and the rest of them literally look like crackheads that are stumbling out of a San Francisco Whole Foods.
I'm sorry, what? What about these people makes them look like crackheads to you? Couldn't possibly be that some of them are black, could it, Brett? The Daily Wire was actually planning on doing their own non-woke Snow White movie starring Brett, but it got canceled. Which is really unfortunate because I'm sure it would have made for a great video. A little bit after this, however, we got our first look at the movie where Zegler seemed to be sharing the screen with 7 more traditional-looking CGI dwarves. But people were still angry with this decision as it robbed rare opportunities from actors with dwarfism.
What other movie could shine a better role on little people, let alone cast 7 of them as leads? This could have made 7 unknown actors household names and given them huge careers.
Which, to be clear, is a valid criticism, but it just feels extremely hollow coming from the same people that were pissed about a black Little Mermaid or a half Colombian Snow White. Like on this one issue, they're suddenly huge proponents for underrepresented groups getting opportunities in Hollywood. No, they were just stoked for another reason to justify their weird hate boner for this princess movie. So after all this controversy, the movie finally comes out, and it feels like not a single person is excited. If you weren't someone who hated it for all the ridiculous woke reasons, you still either didn't want to support a movie with Zionist and terrible actor Gal Gadot, or you just weren't interested in another unnecessary live-action Disney remake. So naturally, it flopped. But I watched it for this video, and what did I think? Yeah, it's bad. It's a very generic, boring kids fantasy movie. Gal Gadot sucks as always, the CGI dwarves were creepy, all but 1 or 2 of the songs were forgettable. Also, the set photo of what everyone assumed were the new dwarves, that was actually a group of unrelated bandit characters who were in the movie in addition to the CGI dwarves. Now, I don't know if they were originally supposed to be the replacement for the dwarves, but then with all the backlash, they rushed to do the dwarves too. But the decision led to the movie having an unnecessarily inflated supporting cast. So yeah, a bad movie, but not for the reasons a lot of people were expecting it to be. Rachel Zegler was fine as Snow White. She has a great singing voice, and you're just never gonna get me to hate someone who's been a guest on my favorite podcast, Blank Check with Griffin and David. Also, people were so mad about her saying that Snow White was gonna be more independent and have more agency, not be saved by the prince. And like with Barbie, that such surface-level feminist messaging would somehow cause a generation of girls to forego marriage and motherhood.
She's not dreaming of true, because girls, by the way, girls should definitely not dream of true love. It'd be very, very bad for girls to dream of true love. Instead, what they have to dream of is being a single wine/cat lady at 40 years old and maybe making partner at the big firm before realizing it's too late, she should have frozen her eggs. That is what we can all aspire to be.
But like, she's still a feminine princess who wears dresses and does house chores. She still has a male love interest who she ends up with in the end. And they even do the kiss while she's asleep, despite in all their little parodies for this movie being certain that they wouldn't.
However, I do not have her consent. It's always important to obtain consent.
Gal Gadot did suck though, everyone was right about that.
You lie!
When this movie ended though, my first thought was, that's it? Like, it wasn't good, but I've seen so many worse movies, and I just don't understand why this, of all movies, warranted 2 years of discourse and controversy leading up to it. So Snow White 2025, is it woke? Not really. Is it bad? Yeah. But just because it's a heartless remake with nothing interesting to say, not because the actress is half Colombian and rides a fucking horse. I will admit though, the 30-minute scene of her reading angles to the dwarves was a bit much. Okay, last movie. Superman 2025 wasn't a movie people were too accusatory of being woke until close to its release, when writer-director James Gunn said that it was an immigrant story, to the frustration of the Fox News types.
So I want to go, I want to sit in a theater, and I want to feel like I am Superman. I want to feel like I can save the world. But if I'm going there being lectured to about immigration, and he's like, well, this is an immigration movie, and if you're not careful, ICE will round you up too, so don't go see it. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying.
Honestly though, I don't think that themes of immigration are too much on display in this movie, apart from maybe this one interaction.
No one read me my rights.
Of course, decided those rights don't apply to extraterrestrial organisms. Therefore, at this point, Superman, you don't have any rights to read.
However, outside of that, this is a film that is very woke, but in the best ways. See, a big part of this film's plot involves a heavily militarized, wealthy Middle Eastern nation who intend to completely wipe out the population of a poorer, helpless one. And the movie takes the firm stance of that not being okay, regardless of what history the two countries have.
First of all, whether or not Jarhanpur is an imperfect country does not give another nation the right to
invade it. Yes, but the Baravian government maintains they're freeing the Jarhanpurians from a tyrannical regime.
Yes, but you know that's very silly.
I do?
The Baravian government of all people is saying this? Come on.
There is no justification for so many innocent lives being taken. Superman doesn't stand for it, and we shouldn't either. And I just think it's so cool that a $200 million superhero movie from Warner Brothers has the balls to take such a clear stance on a conflict that is as close to the real-life of Palestine that we could reasonably hope for in media like this. The only thing is it makes me sad, because obviously in the movie the victims of this conflict are saved by superheroes, whereas in real life so many weren't so lucky. But still, it's so refreshing in this day and age, where it feels like 4-quadrant blockbusters are usually reluctant to take any firm stances, but this one does, and on something so pressing. This movie is also woke for identifying how much insecure billionaires puppeting our world leaders are contributing to the overall shittiness of the world. In short, I love this movie. As I said, I've always loved superheroes, and Superman specifically has always been one of my favorites. There are actually privated videos on this channel from when I was in high school where I talk about the previous cinematic iteration of the character in Man of Steel.
I'll let you tickle my super dick. I don't want to tickle your super dick. It's just not happening. I don't have a desire to. You want just do a hand job. No hand jobs for you, Superman. I don't want to do it.
Okay, that's enough. But in those videos, I discussed what I thought that movie got wrong about the character and what my ideal Superman movie would look like. And this movie is pretty much exactly what I described. James Gunn nailed it. This has everything I could ask for in a movie, and it legitimately makes me want to be a better person. I will admit, though, the 30-minute scene of Clark reading Lois Lennon was a bit much. So, that's it. After watching all 9 of these controversial movies, does any part of me agree that wokeness is to blame for how bad they are? Absolutely not. Yes, a lot of these movies aren't that great or didn't do well at the box office, but there are so many factors contributing to that other than the fact that they feature women, queer people, or people of color in leading roles. Or supporting roles. It is absolutely possible for media to put a spotlight on marginalized groups and also be good and successful. In fact, I think a lot of these movies would have benefited from the representation not being so surface level and digging deeper. But let's be real, even if there was a blockbuster movie that featured the most thorough, authentic exploration of a marginalized person's story that you could imagine, all these right-wing ghouls would be just as angry at it. I mean, I think their hatred of good movies movies like Barbie and Superman is evidence of this. Also, weirdly, even if we started to get good representation in blockbuster movies, I don't necessarily think that the mediocre representation should stop. Because when you think about it, both existing is true equality.